Well, imagine dedicating like 5 entire decades of your life to mastering inner peace.
Right, a whole lifetime.
Yeah, you meditate daily, you do yoga, and you spend thousands of hours intentionally soothing your nervous system to reach this absolute pinnacle of Zen.
The ultimate goal for so many people, yeah.
Exactly. And then one Tuesday afternoon, someone cuts you off or disrespects you at the bank, and you just yell at them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you completely drop the polite demeanor, you raise your voice, and you have to wonder, did your 50 years of spiritual practice just fail?
It sounds like a total failure on paper.
Right. But according to the source material we are diving into today, it didn't fail at all. In fact, it worked perfectly.
Which is, that is a deeply counterintuitive idea for most people to swallow. I mean, we have this pervasive cultural trope that equates enlightenment with, like, an absolute unbroken placidity.
Yeah, like you're just floating above it all.
Exactly, a total absence of friction. We just assume that stepping into mindfulness acts as a flawless eraser for all negative emotions, especially anger.
We expect it to turn us into these impossibly serene beings on a mountaintop. You know, someone who could have a cup of hot coffee spilled directly into their lap and just smile and whisper, "I forgive you."
Yeah, the perfectly detached guru.
But we are entirely dismantling that expectation today in this deep dive. We are looking at the insights of Osman, an advanced meditation and yoga teacher with 50 years of experience.
50 years is incredible.
It really is. And he is completely blind, and the sources describe him as a master-level energy healer who openly discusses his telepathic abilities and his work in critical care recovery.
Yeah, and, before anyone listening just dismisses the telepathy aspect as pure mysticism, we really need to contextualize what that actually looks like in practice.
Right, because it's grounded in something very real.
Exactly. When you lose a primary sense like sight, the brain undergoes neuroplasticity to compensate. So Osman's sensory awareness, his hyperempathy, and his ability to read microscopic nonverbal cues like the tension in a person's vocal cords or their breathing patterns.
Oh, wow, just from listening to them breathe.
Yeah, it's so highly tuned that to the average person, it practically operates like telepathy. I mean, he is processing emotional data that most of us are completely oblivious to.
Okay, let's unpack this, because understanding that level of hypersensitivity is crucial for his main argument. We are exploring a paradox here.
Right.
This highly advanced, incredibly perceptive yogi still gets mad. And he argues that anger is not a failure of his practice, but a vital, functioning feature of his human experience.
What's fascinating here is how we have culturally weaponized the concept of wellness.
Weaponized? How so?
Well, we tend to approach meditation like it's supposed to be a permanent cure for the human condition. People assume that if you just breathe deeply enough, you will never feel irritated again.
Like a brain car wash that just scrubs away all the frustration.
Exactly, a brain car wash. But Osman is very clear about the biological reality versus these completely unrealistic expectations.
He does acknowledge the physiological benefits, though, right? Like, yoga and meditation absolutely reduce your baseline stress level.
Absolutely, yeah.
They lower markers for stress, specifically bringing down your resting cortisol levels. They soothe the sympathetic nervous system, so you aren't just walking around in a constant state of fight or flight.
They do lower cortisol, but, and this is key, we wrongfully extrapolate that physiological truth to mean the complete deletion of an emotion.
Right.
I mean, lowering your resting heart rate doesn't mean your heart is incapable of beating fast if you have to, run from a bear.
That's a great point.
Osman states it plainly. Anger isn't a disease to be cured. It is an evolutionary defense mechanism. But in modern wellness culture, we wrongfully categorize those functional defense mechanisms as toxic or unspiritual.
He pushes back incredibly hard against this idea that spiritual people have to become what he calls like a calm and serene flower.
Yeah, the serene flower myth.
But let me play devil's advocate for what a lot of people listening are probably thinking right now.
Okay, go for it.
If Osman has been practicing these centering techniques for 5 decades, shouldn't his baseline be so incredibly low that almost nothing triggers him? Like, if I practice playing the piano for 50 years, the goal is that I never hit the wrong key. Shouldn't 50 years of meditation mean you just never lose your temper?
That analogy actually highlights the core misunderstanding perfectly. Hitting the wrong key on a piano is an error.
Right.
Feeling anger when your boundaries are crossed is an alarm system functioning exactly as designed.
Oh, wow.
Let's look at the actual mechanism of what meditation does to the brain. When a typical person faces a boundary violation, the amygdala, which is the brain's threat detector, it fires instantly.
Just immediate panic mode.
Right. It floods the body with adrenaline in milliseconds, long before the rational prefrontal cortex even knows what's happening. That is what we call an amygdala hijack.
The explosive anger where you just see red and react blindly.
Precisely. Now, what 50 years of breathwork and mindfulness actually does is physical. It literally thickens the gray matter in the prefrontal cortex and strengthens its connection to the amygdala.
So it changes the actual hardware of the brain?
Yes, exactly. It doesn't stop the amygdala from detecting a threat. What it does is create a microsecond of delay. It creates space.
Ah, I see.
So Osman still feels the intense surge of anger, but he has the structural brain capacity to observe that surge rather than being instantly possessed by it.
So it's less like meditation permanently puts out all the fires in your life and more like you've spent 50 years building a massive, highly effective fire break around your house.
That is a perfect way to look at it.
The external trigger still happens. You know, the lightning still strikes the dry grass. But because you dug that fire break in your prefrontal cortex, you get to decide if the flames actually spread.
The fire break dictates how the landscape survives the strike. And Osman insists we have to stop viewing the lightning strike itself as a failure of our spirituality.
Right. Sometimes lightning just strikes.
Exactly. Sometimes explosive anger is triggered by deep-rooted subconscious issues or chemical imbalances, which, sure, we need to work on. But sometimes it is triggered by a situation that legitimately warrants a defense.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because Osman doesn't just leave this as an abstract biological theory. He grounds it in a highly specific, high-stakes anecdote from his own life.
Yeah, the bank story.
Yes.
Yeah.
He tells a story about a completely mundane errand that perfectly tests this whole fire break concept.
Yeah.
I'd love for you to walk us through exactly what happened, because the details matter immensely here.
The context is absolutely everything here. So Osman needed to use his banking app. He is in a city that he openly describes as dangerous, a place where he legitimately feels he could be robbed.
Right.
He's completely blind, navigating with a white cane, and he happens to be using a very expensive smartphone. It's an iPhone 16 Pro Max, because he relies on its advanced accessibility features to manage his life.
Which instantly makes him a highly visible, highly vulnerable target on the street.
He recognizes that vulnerability.
Yeah.
So to protect himself, he makes a very rational, safety-conscious decision. He decides to go inside a physical bank branch, sit down in a secure, monitored environment, and use his app there.
Makes total sense.
Yeah, he is actively managing his own safety and minding his own business. But because he has his white cane, a bank consultant spots him. The consultant walks over and immediately intervenes, assuming Osman needs help.
Which, if we're looking through the lens of polite society, seems like standard customer service.
Right. On the surface, sure. But let's look at the actual interaction. Osman replies very politely the first time. He says, "No, thank you. I'm fine. I'm just using my banking app." He establishes a clear, polite boundary.
And that should be the end of it.
Right. But the consultant ignores it. They insist, no, let me help you. So Osman declines a second time, still holding his ground calmly. "I'm fine. I don't need any help. I want to do this on my own."
He is literally telling them, I am capable.
But the consultant pushes a third time, physically insisting on intervening in Osman's personal space and task.
Oh, man.
This is the lightning strike. After the third boundary violation, Osman drops the polite tone. He gets visibly angry, actively raises his voice, and firmly demands that the consultant respect his privacy and back off.
Good for him.
He tells them, I told you I don't want your help. If I have a problem, I will let you know.
And the consultant finally walks away. But the reaction of the person who accompanied Osman to the bank is what really struck me.
Oh, yeah.
His companion is absolutely shocked. They look at him and say, "You're a yogi. I didn't expect you to get angry and raise your voice."
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the companion's reaction perfectly mirrors the societal expectation we started with. They saw anger and immediately diagnosed it as a spiritual failure.
We wanted the serene flower.
Exactly. They expected the serene flower. But Osman points out that for disabled individuals, maintaining sanity and independence is a daily, fierce battle.
He specifically notes that disabled people do not want to be treated like children, or, in his words, crippled. When people see a disabled person, there is often this knee-jerk, almost patronizing reaction to force assistance upon them.
Yes.
And it completely strips them of their agency.
The bank consultant was operating from a savior complex. They were prioritizing their own need to feel helpful, or maybe their company's mandate for customer interaction, over Osman's explicitly stated desire for privacy.
They weren't listening to him at all.
Not at all. Society consistently confuses compliance with politeness. The consultant expected compliance with the script of the helpless blind man. And when Osman refused to play that role, the consultant escalated.
But let me push back on this again, because I think a lot of listeners might struggle with the escalation part. I understand that anger is a valid internal alarm, and I understand the boundary was crossed. But why did he have to yell?
Well,
Couldn't he just calmly, quietly say, please leave me alone a fourth time? Why deploy the aggressive tone?
because a quiet tone had already failed twice. Continuing to use a quiet tone when someone is actively ignoring your boundaries isn't being peaceful, it's submitting.
Oh, that is a really crucial distinction.
Osman's anger in that moment wasn't a loss of control. It was a precision-engineered tool. He raised his voice to match the amplitude of the violation.
I see. It reminds me of driving a car. Imagine you're driving cautiously on an unfamiliar road, and the passenger next to you just reaches over and grabs the steering wheel out of your hands because they think they are helping.
Oh, wow. Yes.
You wouldn't just softly smile and whisper, please let go of the wheel. You would yell. You would instinctively use a sharp, aggressive tone to shock them into letting go, because your safety is compromised.
That aggressive tone is the defense mechanism working perfectly. Osman used his voice to shock the consultant into letting go of his metaphorical steering wheel. The consultant was functionally attempting to take control of Osman's private financial interaction.
So what does this all mean for how we handle our own frustrations? It means we have to draw a massive, bold line between what Osman calls controlled anger and the explosive anger that we are rightfully afraid of.
This is the absolute crux of his teachings on the subject. He openly admits, yes, I get angry, but he immediately clarifies the boundary of that anger. He never gets into fistfights. He doesn't lose control to the point where he causes physical harm or does things he will deeply regret the next day.
So instead of the old cliche about a scalpel versus a sledgehammer, it feels more like the difference between a controlled burn and a wildfire.
I love that.
Yeah, explosive anger is a wildfire. It burns down the forest, your relationships, your own well-being, and you have no idea how to stop it. Controlled anger is a deliberate, contained fire set by a professional to clear out dead brush so the forest can actually thrive. It serves a specific protective purpose, and then it extinguishes.
That is a much more accurate framework. And Osman highlights it sometimes. Executing that controlled burn requires matching the energy of the threat in front of you.
What does that look like in practice?
He notes that if someone comes at you threatening your physical safety and screaming, sometimes you literally have to scream back. Not because you've lost your mind, but because matching that acoustic amplitude is the only way to neutralize the situation and assert dominance over your own space.
Which completely flies in the face of all our polite corporate HR conditioning. I mean, we are trained almost from birth to believe that de-escalation always means lowering your voice, shrinking your physical presence, and accommodating the other person.
Exactly. And this raises an important question. What is the cost of all that accommodation? Osman has zero tolerance for what we might call fake diplomacy.
Oh, the fake diplomacy.
Yeah, he prefers brutal honesty over socially conditioned plastic politeness.
The classic passive-aggressive smile. We all know people who operate entirely in this mode. They are furious with you or they resent you, but they cover it up with this sing-song, artificially sweet customer service voice.
Right, per my last email kind of energy.
Yes. They swallow their valid anger to maintain the illusion of being nice.
And that suppression is deeply unhealthy.
Right.
It creates a baseline of resentment. Osman talks about how people will smile, act diplomatic, but secretly hold a deep-seated hatred or grudge against someone for years.
Just letting it fester.
Exactly. They are experiencing the physiological effects of anger, the cortisol, the elevated heart rate, but they are trapping it inside their bodies because they are terrified of being perceived as difficult.
Osman flat out refuses to do that. He says he would rather look someone in the eye, figuratively speaking, of course, and openly say, honestly, I don't like you and I prefer not to deal with you.
He acknowledges that saying things so directly is jarring. It hurts people's feelings, and they often want to argue with him. But he does it because, returning to his hyperperceptive abilities, he reads the subtle, crafty nuances in how people speak.
He hears what they're not saying.
Yes. He hears the patronizing intent even when the words themselves seem harmless.
Which is basically the definition of gaslighting, right? Someone uses technically polite words to undermine you, so if you get upset, they can throw their hands up and say, I didn't say anything wrong, why are you so sensitive?
And society rewards the person who maintains the polite facade, even if they are the aggressor. But Osman, because of his decades of internal awareness, cuts right through the facade.
He doesn't play the game.
No, he hears the intention behind the words, and he calls it out directly. He says, "No, you are patronizing me." He doesn't allow the fake diplomacy to take root.
To help us navigate this, he actually provides his own personal escalation toolkit. And I think this is where the theoretical philosophy becomes incredibly practical for anyone listening who struggles with setting boundaries.
It really does.
It's a structured, four-step protocol for deploying controlled anger.
Step 1 is the ultimate exercise of agency. If someone is crossing a line or patronizing him, he simply tries to walk away. He physically removes himself from the situation.
Just denying them the interaction.
Right. It's an acknowledgement that you do not owe an aggressor your presence or an explanation.
But sometimes you can't walk away. Like at the bank, he needed to finish his task. So step 2, if he can't leave, he firmly demands that they leave. He uses clear, unambiguous language. Please leave. I don't want you in my presence anymore.
Asserting ownership over his immediate space. Now, if they refuse that direct request, they're committing a massive violation of boundaries. They're actively choosing to ignore his autonomy. So he escalates to step 3. He firmly raises his voice to communicate that boundary with absolute undeniable clarity.
The controlled burn.
Yes, the controlled burn. He brings the internal alarm system to the surface so the other person cannot possibly claim they misunderstood.
And finally, step 4. If the situation is truly stuck and raising his voice doesn't shock them into backing off, he brings in a higher authority to mediate or remove the person. He recognizes when an individual boundary requires systemic enforcement, like asking for a manager or security.
Notice how methodical that is. It isn't a tantrum. It is a progression of choices. And that brings us to the actual definition of mindfulness. Society tells us mindfulness is feeling nothing negative.
The serene flower again?
Right. But Osman's life demonstrates that true mindfulness is about having choice. Because he has spent 50 years observing his own mind and strengthening that prefrontal cortex. When the cortisol spikes and the anger rises up, he doesn't become possessed by it.
He observes it.
He observes the anger, validates that a boundary is being crossed, and then chooses which step of the toolkit to deploy.
He isn't a victim to his emotions. He is the director of them.
Oh.
Love that framing. He feels the anger, but he doesn't let the anger drive the car. He just uses it to honk the horn really, really loud when someone drifts into his lane and tries to run him off the road.
The practice of yoga and meditation hasn't made him numb. It has made him incredibly precise. He feels the threat to his autonomy, and he responds with exact, measured force.
So if we are bringing this all together for you listening right now, if we are pulling all these threads together, the main takeaway here completely rewrites the script on what it means to do the inner work.
It really does.
Being spiritual or mindful or just trying to be a self-aware person doesn't mean you sign a contract to become the world's most enlightened doormat. It means clearing away the daily static.
You reduce your baseline stress and your everyday anxiety through these practices so that when a true violation of your boundaries occurs, when someone is genuinely patronizing you, threatening your safety, or trying to grab your steering wheel, the signal of anger comes through loud and clear.
And because there is no static, you can trust that signal.
Exactly.
Trusting your own anger. That is an incredibly powerful concept. Because as Osman showed us with the bank consultant, sometimes dropping the fake diplomacy and raising your voice is the most self-respecting, sanity-preserving thing you can possibly do.
Without a doubt.
So I want to ask you to really reflect on your own daily life right now. Look at your interactions at work with your family or even with strangers. Are there situations where you are forcing a plastic, passive-aggressive smile, swallowing your own valid irritation, when a firm, honest boundary is actually what's desperately required?
It's a hard question to ask yourself.
It is. Are you holding on to the steering wheel of your own life? Or are you politely letting someone else drive you off the road?
It requires a profound reassessment of our emotional landscape. And I want to leave you with one final, perhaps slightly provocative thought to mull over long after this deep dive ends.
Okay, let's hear it.
If anger is, at its biological core, a natural evolutionary mechanism meticulously designed by nature to protect our boundaries, our safety, and our fundamental autonomy, could it be that striving to never be angry, to suppress and numb that vital alarm system entirely, is actually the most disconnected, unspiritual thing you could possibly do to yourself?
Man, think about that the next time you find yourself trying to wash away your very human reactions. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.